Former President Trump faced the music at a campaign rally in Iowa Friday. Amid growing legal woes, the former president took the stage. Just as the walkout song, playing in the background, blared lyrics that his opponents hope foreshadow his legal fate. One could end up going to prison on. One, despite, might be physically. So you couldn't make that out. Or if you've been living under a rock. And I'm familiar with that song. That is Brooks and Dunn only in America. And they're talking about all the things that can happen in this country. Talking about someone who could go to prison. Someone who could become president. Joining us now to discuss, a former Republican Congressman, Charlie Dent, and CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist, Karen Finney. Karen, as you know, I know that Brooks and Dunn song is played at every single political rally. Folks at both parties use that to pump up the crowd. And we just don't know at this point if those lyrics were intentionally played at that time, or if it was just a coincidence. What do you make of that moment? Well, if anything, it's certainly the person who is in charge of production maybe should have paid a little closer attention to that. That's a little bit on the nose, just given everything that's going on. I'm just saying, they could have skipped it forward or gone to a different part of the song. I would imagine, though, within the Trump campaign today, someone is getting their head bitten off. No question. It right. Because his usual walk-out song, when he has control over the music, is Lee Greenwood. Yes. Yeah. Got to be careful. All right. This hour, Charlie Trump is holding a rally in your home state of Pennsylvania. He, of course, lost that state in 2020 in your eyes. What are his prospects there? Well, as long as he has these legal storm clouds over his head, I think he's got real problems. Now, I get it in the primary. Among the base. This is motivating. A certain element of it. And he's certainly doing well in the polls. But among the general electorate, particularly swing state, like Pennsylvania, to be devastating. In fact, the fact that the Trump is in Erie, Pennsylvania, tonight is significant. Because Erie is one of 2 of 6. Who is one of 2 counties in Pennsylvania? There are 67 counties. But Erie and Northampton counties are the 2 counties that went for Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and then Joe Biden. These are truly swing counties. So he's there for a reason. But again, Trump's legal problems and his never-ending looking backwards and grievance politics about what happened. The 2020 election, I think, are not going to help. In these swing states and marginal congressional districts, it's a real problem for the party. They all know it. They want him. They want Trump to go away. But these leading contenders against them are afraid to say anything to him because they're fearful, antagonizing his base. Other than maybe Christie will hurt that. Tim Hutchinson Blunt and Governor Ron DeSantis is facing backlash from some of his black lawmakers in his party over his support for a new education guideline in Florida. Specifically, this requirement that students be taught that black people benefited from slavery. What do you make of this? It was a real misstep on the part of Ron DeSantis to double and triple down, and some in the Republican Party. Earlier in the week, even, they were attacking Vice President Harris, even suggesting that she was lying about the standards. Well, now, as you see, as African Americans, there is something about the experience of slavery. We don't need to rely on textbook or expert. We have our own stories in our own family. So we know about the horrors of slavery. And what the outcome was. It does. For the Republican Party, though, in a very complicated position. Because you now have conservative black legislators in the crosshairs of Ron DeSantis at a moment when the Republican Party has been trying to make inroads with African Americans. And so, how they are going to try to have it both ways? I think it's going to be interesting to watch. And I think it's another sign that Ron DeSantis just cannot win in a general election with this kind of a message. And Charlie, one of the other black Republicans DeSantis has attacked, Senator Tim Scott, appears to be heating up in terms of the polls. His super PAC has brought in around $20 million. And some state polls have him gaming on DeSantis, or even overtaking him for second place. DeSantis was once, of course, stopped to be the antidote to Trump. Now it looks like it could be Scott. Well, yeah. Well, Tim Scott has a very aspirational, forward-looking message. He is kind of like the anti-Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis in many ways. And that, Scott is not talking about grievance and victimization. He's talking about the future. He's talking about what can happen. And he's got a wonderful, optimistic message. He's got a great personal story. I think people are responding to that. It's as simple as that. And again, Ron DeSantis has made missteps. As Karen just said, with the, slavery and personal benefit. And those state education guidelines. Ridiculous. Vaccines are a point. Robert Kennedy, Jr., as the FDA, leader of the FDA, or the Centers for Disease Control. These are things that just crazy. So he's had these types of missteps in recent days. And I think Tim Scott is benefiting. Again, with his personal story and a very positive message. And Karen, President Biden publicly acknowledged his 4-year-old granddaughter, Navy, for the first time. In a statement, first reported by People magazine, he said, quote, "Our son, Hunter, and Navy's mother, London, are working together to foster a relationship that is in the best interests of their daughter, preserving her privacy as much as possible going forward. This is not a political issue. It's a family matter. If this isn't political, why has the White House been so reluctant to discuss this issue? This young lady is 4 years old.